I am here with Kyle Root with Empire Estates, and I'm really excited to jump into this interview because I know nothing about you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, you had inquired through the show website that you wanted to be on the show, which is really exciting. I'm so glad that somebody took me up on that. And so we're kind of just meeting each other. And from what I stalked you briefly on Instagram and saw a little bit of you had put a little blurb about yourself. It looked like you were qualified to be on the show and very inspiring. So, Kyle, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and your current portfolio?
Really come from pretty humble beginnings. I currently now 28 years old. Grew up in Michigan, Midwest, small town, maybe about 10,000 people. And if anyone has grown up in a small community, small household, middle class, there's a mindset that comes with that. There's a mindset that comes with mediocrity, if you will. And it's just that you go get a good job and kind of continue on and invest in your 401k. And that's kind of the path that I took. So out of high school, I went and played college football at a Division II school. Went into construction management as a degree. Really just didn't excel in school, if you will. Kind of had unfortunately, the jock hat on where I don't know what I was thinking. I certainly wasn't going professional under any means and just didn't take grades seriously till about my senior year in college. Kind of got my stuff together and graduated with a 3.0 GPA, which I was fine with at the time, and went and got a construction management degree. And like many people that start down this real estate journey, you find yourself kind of in this, wow, I've got to work a job for the next 30, 40 years of my life. And things just didn't click for me. I mean, I was making good money out of college and things were working out okay, but I knew I didn't want to do this for the rest of my life. So I started going down this real estate journey, reading a bunch of books, going in the information gathering phase, if you will, and then just bought my first duplex back in 2019 and kind of just kept snowballing to today, sitting around 80 units, flipping about two properties a month. And now we're going to start getting into some wholesaling and stuff like that. So that's kind of where things are at and how I got here.
Wow. Okay. 28 for one. So you're still really young. You have 80 units and you're flipping two a month, which those separately are impressive. The 80 units, are those through syndications or are they solely yours or joint ventures? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so that was the other thing. I didn't want to do any syndication or joint ventures. One, because I didn't want to give up control. I'm not saying like I'm a control freak. My wife might think otherwise, but
It's control
um,
oriented person. Okay,
yeah, I
that's
like that.
to be.
That's good. But I wanted the control of my assets. I wanted to control the direction of my company. And so I didn't do any joint venture, no syndication, but I used some private money, hard money to kind of get through some of the renovations and things like that. So it wasn't all my money under any means, but I just didn't pool it together through a syndication or bring in other long-term partners.
Okay, so they're all your units, and what are they? What does it consist of? Are they all single family or duplexes? What are they?
All 1 to 4 unit. I have one fourplex, one triplex, and the rest are made up of single family and duplexes.
I did not
Yeah.
expect you to say that. I have an 80 unit and eight, or something like that. The majority of it was not going to be single family homes. So, how's
I mean, it's going great. So again, like I started building it in 2021 when interest rates were kick butt. So the majority of my single family homes that I purchased were in 2020, 2021. And I've kind of filtered away from that just because of the interest rates have
Mhm.
cut down on that margin a little bit. So I've kind of steered away from single families. But today, even duplexes in the Midwest still cash flow really well.
I'm just so
No,
excited about this. How did you buy them so fast? How did you get to 80?
so obviously just starting off, I my first deal that I got was a house hack, right? A house hack was the very first one and it took a long time and I realized I'm like, okay, this is not going to work. This isn't going to get me out of my job in 5 to 10 years house hacking my way into wealth. It can be done. It's a really underutilized method,
Mhm.
especially right out of the gate, but I was like I got to figure something else out. So I just started talking to some people about money sitting in 401s, money sitting around, and they were like, if you can offer a return on my money, if you can offer a return on my money, I'd be willing to go in on some short-term real estate transactions with you. And again, this is after I've done 3 or 4 deals, right? So my
Okay.
first three or four deals, I put 20% down, I fixed them up with my own money, cash out refinance, get my money back, repeat. And that was over a course of about 9 months. So the first like 9 months was pretty slow. And I ended up with 1 duplex and 3 single family homes in that time frame. So, but I had a proof of concept at that point. So I wasn't going to these people and saying, you want to, I don't know what I'm doing, but what do you think about shelling some money over and seeing how this thing
Yeah.
goes? So I had a proof of concept and I showed them and they're like, well, if I can make 12% on 100,000 in 6 months, 7 months, who wouldn't do that? It's better than a 401k. It's better than any return that most people are getting in other markets. I was able to group together a large sum of money for short-term capital, for working capital. And my background is in construction. So I just started a construction company behind it, hired project managers, my laborers and carpenters behind them. We subbed out plumbing, electrical, the kind of the big ticket items we hired out as subcontractors. And once I figured out how to do one a month, I'm like, all we have to do is add pieces to do 2 a month. All we have to do is add pieces to do 3 a month. And then we just kind of kept that system. And once you're doing 2 or 3 transactions a month, really to get to 3 to 4 to 5 transactions a month, all you're doing is adding team members. And then if you add team members, you have to make sure you have enough working capital. And then it just really snowballed from there.
Kyle, you're my idol right now. This is
Thanks. That's very
amazing.
nice of you.
I love it. So you are buying around where you live, it sounds like.
That's how I started.
Okay.
So everything that I purchase is 90% of what I purchase and own is directly off the MLS. Back in
Wow.
2020 and 2021, there were enough deals here locally that I could offer on. And one of the things that I did is I told myself I didn't want huge overhead. I didn't want a big marketing campaign. I didn't want to pay a bunch of people to get my name out there. So what could I
Mhm.
do to not have all this overhead, not have this massive sales team and be able to still
Yeah.
chase deals? So I'm like, there's deals sitting on the MLS. So if a property's listed at 100,000, I am not shameful to offer at 70,000. I'm just not. I'm not. And I knew that if I offered on 10 deals and we got one, well, we have a 10% accepted rate. So I'm just like, okay, so in order for us, it's all about KPIs, right? Like your key performance indicators, how track your numbers. So I knew 10% of my offers that go in, I would get. If we need 2 transactions, well, that means we need to find 20 deals to offer on. And that worked locally for a while, but then we ran out of deals because we were offering on all of them. So we started expanding. Now I'm in some different markets like Milwaukee, Toledo, Ohio, some places in Michigan. But we kind of did that out of necessity. But again, it's just about setting up your team. So we were forced to expand. We either expanded or had to start doing some type of local marketing. And I just didn't want to do that.
Interesting. So you're buying off the MLS and you're not afraid to submit a lowball offer, which is super powerful. I want to address that really quick because there's a couple different ways that investors or people can think about it. And I think right off the bat, a lot of times people feel like they're insulting people when they offer lowball offers. And tell me if this is kind of your mindset as well. I try to think of it as providing another option. They may not want to take it, but you're doing them a service, even if it's, 70 cents on the dollar. Right? Is that kind of, what your mindset was? There a shift that needed to happen, or did you always think like it was a no-brainer just to lowball people?
I mean, first of all, I want to compliment you on having that mindset because that's exactly my mindset. But it wasn't that way forever. Like when I first got in the game, I was very
Mhm.
shy, kept my head down, didn't want to hurt feelings. I'm like, I don't want to be a big disruptor here and people going, who the heck is this guy trying to offer these properties? But you're exactly right. The thing is when you're offering on properties, let's say
Yeah.
you have to look for opportunity, right? So
Mhm.
I don't just if a property just hit the market, I'm not going to lowball them after 2 days on the market. I look
Right.
for
Ah,
30
good
days,
point.
30 days plus on the market. I'm like, okay, hey guys, like this thing's been sitting for a while. We've
Yeah.
shown in the last 2 or 3 years that if you don't have people are getting 20, 30 offers in the first week. That was what our reality was. And I'm like, if you miss that chunk of period, like that time frame, this
Mhm.
property's not worth what it's listed at. So I'm like, here's
Yeah.
what I can do for you. You
Mhm.
have it listed at 100. I will offer it at 65, 70,000 because I have a construction background and I don't advise other people to do this if you don't know what you're necessarily looking at. I'm willing to remove the inspection contingency. So I won't nickel and dime you. I know the value of the property. I'll remove the appraisal contingencies. So I basically offer cash, no contingencies. And people are like, okay, he can close in 2 to 3 weeks. I'm like, you want 65 or 75 or 70,000 in 2 weeks, or do you want to keep waiting this out? And once people started accepting those offers,
Yeah.
it was kind of just a lot of people were kind of thankful. They're like, thanks for just giving me a clean offer that I can move on from this property. Because what we're doing is we're solving people's problems. I buy all properties that need work, and I'm removing that headache from their life. And I think I kind of had that mindset shift of like, you're not necessarily lowballing them and trying to be rude. Like, that's not what I was trying to do. What I was trying to do is, first of all, it has to make sense mathematically as investors, right?
Right.
But just like you said, and you said it the best actually I've heard, is we're giving them another option, right? It's like, you don't have you can tell me no, but we're giving them another option.
That's really powerful. So I love that you described what your offer looks like to the seller, right? Cash, it's quick, it's non-contingent. They could, wait for a higher offer and then get bombarded with inspection contingency, reductions, credits. So, and end up where you were offering initially. So it's not a bad idea for them to accept. Tell me about your relationship and how you go about securing an agent. Do you go through the listing agent, or do you have a go-to that you have a relationship with in these markets?
So I have a buyer's agent that does all of my work. So I'm also a licensed realtor. And the reason I wanted to personally have my license is strictly for access
Mhm.
and access to these properties, and to be able to get a little piece of the pie, if you will. And so I have a buyer's agent that does all of my transactions everywhere in Wisconsin. So let's just use Wisconsin as an example. He covers the entire state of Wisconsin. Me and my team, we go out to these properties. All he has to do is sit behind a computer. Because I'm a licensed realtor, I can tell him this is my offer price. I already looked at the property, because I don't know how it is in every state, but here in Wisconsin, the realtor can't write an offer sight unseen. They actually have to go look at the property, or the buyer has to of some sort, right? Like you
Mm.
just can't write a sight unseen. So
Well,
he go
yeah,
ahead.
that's not the case in California. Just throwing that out there. You can
Got
write
it.
and see.
So I think now that I'm kind of thinking about it, I think that technically you can, but I feel like there's almost like a rule of thumb that it's like, have you seen it? And like, we have this thing called showing time, where once you put a showing together, it goes directly to the seller and they know when there's a showing. And
Mhm.
if there hasn't been a showing, we get caught up in inspections and all that other crap. So a seller in our market will be like, if you haven't even seen the property, I'm not going to
Yeah.
sell this thing to you. I guess I have one buyer's agent in the state of Wisconsin. My team goes and walks these properties. We look at them. We find our offer price, and he just takes care of the contractual obligations. He's
Mm.
behind a computer. He takes care of all the contractual stuff. We just remove ourselves. But with the seller's side of things, I don't want to operate as a listing agent. We have multiple different listing agents depending on the area, because it's just not that easy, right? Like
Mhm.
being on the seller's side, we have to have multiple different sellers agents. And it's super critical. If your agents are either going to make you or break you. If you have a really good agent that's either, I look for two things, either one that's young and a hustler. He might not know the whole game, but he's willing to hustle, or
Yeah.
someone that has a pile of experience. I want one of the two or the combination. But it's
Mm.
just not going to be a great fit for me. Sorry, I kind of rambled there.
No, feel free to ramble. So I'm a realtor as well, a resident, and a lot of our listeners are. So I like hearing the perspective of that relationship between the investor and the agent, as well as what you look for in an agent. And I think you said it perfectly. Basically, somebody that's really hungry or has tons of experience. There are agents in between, right?
For sure.
That aren't
For
very
sure.
hungry and also don't have a lot of experience. Maybe they're still working their 9 to 5. So you said in the first 9 months you did 3 to 4 deals. Were you still working another job while doing that?
I was, yeah, for the first probably year and a half. About a year and a half, I was still working another job. And all I really needed to do was have a proof of concept. I needed to prove to myself that I was able to do this. And at the time, and again, like, I don't advise anybody to do this. At the time, I was single. I had a good chunk of money in my bank, and I figured out a system. And under no means, like, when I left my job, I think I had 9 rental units and had one flip that I was working on, and I just took a chance on myself. I knew that I left on good terms. I could go back to my job, but I'm like, hey guys, I want to go do this. I want to go see if I can make this happen. I had a proof of concept. I had, not only my money in reserves, but I had, people that were willing to give me some working capital. And I had done 3 or 4 transactions to be able to show that. But going back in time, to be honest, I probably should have hung out at my job for a little bit longer. I think it would have been a little easier from the refinance perspective, because
Mm.
when you leave your job and you can't show proof of income, makes
Yeah.
things a little bit difficult. So I held my job for about a year and a half when I got into the real estate journey.
Okay. I appreciate you sharing that maybe you would have stuck around your job a little bit longer. You probably had to shift the financing. Did you start doing more like commercial or DSCR?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
and also to clarify, you are doing the BRRRR strategy on these homes or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
After like the first, yeah, the first 2 duplexes that I did, both house, but all the single family homes in between that were BRRRRs, and then from there, that's what I've done. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And we've talked about BRRRR quite a bit on the show, which is, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. Just to clarify, if we won't elaborate on that too
Yeah.
much, but that's the strategy being used here where you can offer a return on other people's money because of this strategy. So that is really cool. I love this deep dive into that. So we've kind of gone over your first deal, right? Which was the duplex house hack, correct?
Correct.
And you realized you needed to scale faster. That wasn't going to work. Was there anything essential else that you learned on that first deal?
Yeah. I guess how bad I was at running numbers. I think a lot of people are willing to tell the success stories, but really that first one was a big eye opener for me. I was reading a lot of like Grant Cardone's book, and he's like, you have to go multifamily. You have like he's obviously really big into syndication. I'm like, okay, I just got to go multifamily. It's going to appreciate. Good things are going to happen. And I did not run my numbers properly. I got caught up in this information gathering phase for too long. And I started to kind of go through this period where I was kind of getting frustrated with myself. I'm like, okay, Kyle, you've read every single book, you've listened to every single podcast. At some point here, we're going to have to execute on this little dream you got, buddy, because this is not going to quite cut it. So, luckily, I was able to buy the first duplex. I think I put 15% down, but I had to do some renovations. So, like, let's say 20% down on a $200,000 duplex, closing costs, all that good stuff. I think I had around $40,000 into this property,
Mm.
and I lived in it. And I was paying like $200 a month living in the one side, which is great. Like, that worked out great. And then once I moved out after 6 months, a new tenant went in there. It was a completely remodeled property. I remodeled the whole thing and myself, so I was able to keep a lot of expenses down. But once I moved the new tenant in, well, all of those little fixes that I just did by myself, I realized those were maintenance calls. Those were trips for my property manager. I paid a property manager. And after it was all said and done, I was making like $200 a month with about $40,000 sitting in this, and that's not a great return on my money. So I had a lot of money tied up into a property where I wasn't cash flowing a lot, and I'm like, geez, this is going to take me forever. I mean, it just took me 2 years to save up this, $30,000 to put on the down payment, and then I've been paying towards the renovation. Luckily, I was able to sell it. I made about $40,000 after selling. I got my money back. I was able to sell it when the market got hot. The first deal, there's so many lessons in there. And to be honest, if you can I think house hacking is a great method when you first are getting started because it's low risk, especially now. I mean, I think they just changed it for a multifamily. It's now 5% down for a
Wow.
multifamily, super low risk for people if you run your numbers properly. And if you don't, at least you're going to be at least at the very least, you don't have tons of money tied up into it.
Yeah.
And, if you hold real estate long enough, you're going to be okay. So, long story short, it was a heck of a learning lesson for the first duplex.
Yeah. So would you say, looking back, that you probably should have offered a lower price or bought a cheaper duplex?
Yeah, I should have just offered a lower price. And it's a great case study for me. About a year ago, I went back and looked at that property. I'm like, let's just run the numbers and see what Kyle today would do. And I was
Mhm.
probably about 30 grand off. And the property had been sitting for about 40 days, which at that time when I purchased it in 2020 was a long time for a property to be sitting. So I should have probably purchased around 25 to $30,000 under what I did. Not
Mhm.
saying I would have got it, but anyways, it was a great case study for me moving forward, and I definitely should have just offered lower.
That is really interesting. I think that that would probably be a common mistake. The first purchase, right, is getting the numbers a little off. But kudos to you for taking action. I definitely relate to when you said that you just started taking in information and then started getting sick of yourself, which has happened to me quite a few times where I can't even listen to any more books or any more podcasts because I'm getting all revved up and excited every day and then not doing anything. It's embarrassing to myself. Like I have to turn everything off and say like, okay, I'll come back and turn this back on once I actually start making offers or doing something. But I get super annoyed with myself after consuming too much without action. So if you're listening to this and that is you, push pause, go run some numbers, take a look, do a walkthrough, talk to some agents, take some action because that's the cure. That's the cure, I feel like, to that feeling is just taking action in that direction. And you took action even despite having your numbers wrong, right? And it still sent you on this path, this momentum, albeit maybe it was a misstep, it was still a step. So that's really cool. I'm assuming that you do not self manage these 80 units, correct?
I do not. If it's able to grow, to be honest, is if I was self-managing, I don't really know where I would be at. Not that I won't in the future as I grow my portfolio, but having a property manager in place allows me the time to scale and grow my business.
That is really cool. And you're in different markets. So I'm assuming different, or are you a part of like a nationwide, like online one? Just curious.
All local to the areas that I invest. When I go in, just I guess a little piece for people out there. If you're going into a new market, what I've done, like if I go into the first market that I stepped out of, I live in Green Bay, Wisconsin. The first market I stepped into was Milwaukee. And when I went down there and I started buying, I used about 3 or 4 different property management companies because
Hmm.
every single property management company is going to tell you they're the best. They're going to tell you that they have the greatest technology, that they have the best systems. And I've been with enough property managers where I know that the only proof is by doing a couple months through their company. So what I did is I gave several different property managers one property and I just let them run with it. And this is why you need to make sure that you are taking a look at the PMA, which is the property management agreement. Like, don't sign your life away. And I'm saying if there's 10 in one market, find 2 or 3 that make sense. And if you like those conversations, give them a chance because one will be the best. But the only way you're going to find that, in my opinion, is by you can vet them all you want, but the best you can find is by actually working with them. So that's what I started doing.
That is such a cool idea. I wrote it down. I like it so much to, if you're in a position where you have multiple properties, just give one to a few different property managers. That's brilliant. And then see what happens. See who you drive with, who, matches your style, who follows through on what they said that they were going to do. That is brilliant and totally a really great nugget from this interview.
A really good point on property managers fitting your style because there's some owners out there that are tough. If I was a property manager, I would be very hesitant to work with some owners. Like some owners want to be really, really involved. Some owners
Yeah.
want to be 100% passive. So you're right. Like, a property manager that would work great for me. I like to be really in depth and in the details. I have a friend that doesn't even want to look at statements. All he cares about is seeing money come in and out, and he
Right.
wants nothing to do with it. So that's a good point.
Yeah. And I think that because we're all different, it's a good idea to have an outline of what you expect and not to expect them to know what you want. They don't know how much information to give or how much communication is too much, and they'll probably err on the side of less. So, having a specific framework when you go into a relationship with a property manager is probably a good idea. So, what are the current challenges that you're facing at this part of your real estate investing journey at this size at 80 units and 2 flips a month?
I think right now, kind of in my life and where I want to go business wise and what I have going on, my biggest challenge right now is to start filling in some of the leadership roles. I want to start dipping into more markets, right? So like right now I'm in three probably major markets, I would say, all in the Midwest, but I really want to start building out these teams. But everyone right now reports to me, and I want to start bringing in some leadership positions and just being from my background. And like I'll admit when I'm not good at something. I'll fully admit when I don't know how to do something, and I'm not sure if I know how just yet to bring in a leadership position, develop that leadership position. What does that leadership position look like? I think I recognize some of the pain points that are going on in my business for me personally, but again, like I've been starting to do some research and reaching out to other big real estate operators to see how they went about it. So I would say right now that's kind of it, is figuring out leadership positions, what that leadership position looks like, and then kind of their roles and responsibilities and how I can help develop that person. Because I've certainly had some people that I've hired that I 100% failed them. They did not fail me. I failed them because I brought them in. I was like, this is a sink or swim situation. I thought they could figure it out, and they didn't. And I didn't develop them the way they needed. I didn't support them the way they needed. And I'm aware of that. So when I bring in somebody again, let's say in a leadership position, not only do I want it to be the right person, I need to make sure that I'm ready to help them and put them in the best possible situation. So I think that's probably it.
That is a struggle that a lot of people share. Have you heard of EOS, entrepreneurial, whatever,
I'm gonna write
entrepreneurial
it.
system? And I'm trying to remember, it might be from the book Traction by Gino Wickman, but a lot of high performers in their business use EOS as their operating system for as what you're describing, is creating a ecosystem and creating the branches below you and how to just report to you and kind of give that responsibility to them. EOS. I think that would be helpful for you. There's a lot of content out there about how to implement that system. I know if you're a fan of Bigger Pockets, that's what Brandon Turner uses. A lot of people that I know in the real estate world. So not that I asked you the question to solve your problem, but
No, I appreciate it.
I'm always curious, like, what are people struggling with at different parts? I hear a lot of advice for beginners and what's the struggle with just starting out. And I don't feel like we always hear the less glamorous sides of when people get units or where they want to be and have these great portfolios. Like, there's still struggles. You're not,
Yeah,
I've made it. I can completely relax on a beach
for
and
sure.
life is perfect and nothing goes wrong. At every level, there are struggles and challenges with growth. So that's kind of why I asked that question. So I appreciate you sharing that. I normally ask for some advice for beginners. You've kind of already talked about that, but is there anything that else you want to elaborate on, as far as we talked a bit before hopping on about overcoming obstacles and what the obstacles right now in real estate really are? I'd love to hear your opinion.
You can look at real estate and getting started really two ways. You can self-operate, you can go into it yourself, you can learn your own lessons, you can do your own research, you can live in your little bubble and you'll figure it out. You certainly will. Or you can find someone that's been through it, right? Like someone that's already built a business, made all the mistakes, and you can learn from them, right? Like say a mentor, you take a coaching course or you go to some of these, even your local meetups, just going there and being around people and asking questions, keeping in mind that most people, very few people that I've ran into that I really like enjoy having conversations can talk without maybe giving their own personal message, right? Like a lot of people will be like, if they only buy single family homes, they're like, you better only buy single family homes, man. If you get into multifamily, I don't know. Very few people can actually have conversations and provide advice without just saying what's worked for them. But I think there's people out there, definitely in the real estate world, in the space, that from a mentorship, coaching, whatever, however you want to look at it, can help navigate a lot of the things that many different people want to go down, regardless of the avenue you want to do in real estate.
Mhm.
There's people out there that can help you go down those. And I think I don't know where I would be, but I wish I would have started off with a coach or a mentor right out of the gate, because a lot of the problems and things that I ran into cost me tens of thousands of dollars that I simply just didn't have to, probably could have, they weren't necessary. They definitely weren't. They were just my rookie mistakes that I was trying to build this team by myself. But if I would have just removed my ego, would have put my guard down and just asked for help, there's
Mhm.
tons of people out there. So I think getting some help or being around just whatever it is, mentor or local groups, I think it's really important to do that, but keeping in mind that you're going to be overloaded with information. I think it's best to find one or two people and just go tunnel vision and just start chasing. I just think too many people get too wide in their search and they just never create really much action at all because they just get overwhelmed with information, overwhelmed with the amount of thoughts and different patterns in real estate. I've just found finding one or two people that you really enjoy and connect with and just put your own tunnel vision on and just start chasing it.
I love that. Yeah, it's hard to deny the shiny object syndrome when you talk to somebody who's been there, done that, and there's so much conviction and they want to help you so much. And they're very passionate about explaining, just like how you said, like you have to do single family, multifamily, Airbnb, medium term rentals, syndications. There's so many there, and even beyond, like so many different avenues that you can take with real estate investing. And because it worked for them, they want it to work for you. Well, then, you could start down that path and then talk to somebody else, and somebody else has just as much conviction. I don't know about you, but there's this like people pleaser tendency. It's like, well, I want to make you proud and I want to make you proud and I want to follow you, right? So just kind of narrowing in, like you said, tunnel vision on what.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I talk to a lot of people that want to get started in real estate. And I just tell them, I'm like, just pick one lane and stay in that lane long enough for you to be super efficient, super effective, and dominate that lane, whatever it is. Storage units, Airbnbs, you need to be aware too, right? Like you need to educate yourself. If you want to be in a space, like who knows what's going to happen with some of these midterms and Airbnbs, like you need to stay educated and up to speed, and you might have to adjust,
Mhm.
but as long as you're staying up to speed and you have the capacity to be able to adjust along the way, I
Yeah.
think that dominating in one lane for long enough gives you the capacity later on down the road to start widening your bandwidth and start
Yeah.
dipping into other things. Like I wouldn't go commercial one building and then, storage facilities, then Airbnb. You're being really ineffective with your skill sets. If you can develop your skill sets and stay in one lane long enough, you're gonna just know how to run a business. And I think at that point you can start dipping into other things. Again, just my opinion, but I think it
You're
is
very
one.
passionate about this.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. No, I 100% agree. I think that's really great advice. Get good enough at one thing. I want to chat with you about a few fun questions now. Tell me something that you are obsessed with. This is the Obsessed with Real Estate show, so I already know you're obsessed with real estate. Tell me something, maybe not even real estate related, that you are currently obsessed with.
Yeah, it's actually going to be kind of odd, but so my wife and I, we literally just got a dog, and I did not think I was a dog person at all. And I kept telling her, she's like, can we get a dog? And I just told her name's Stacia. And I said, Stacia, you're just going to have to show up with a dog. Like, you're not going to get me to say yes. You're just going to have to show up with a dog. Well, she did one day, and I love that thing. He is the
Oh.
best in the world. So I would say if I'm obsessed with anything currently, honestly, he kind of ruined some of my time. I should be working and I'm just like playing with him. I'm like, dude, you're kind of like, you're too much fun. But I think right now I've just really been enjoying hanging out with my dog. I guess that would be it.
Oh, newly converted dog person.
It's crazy.
I don't meet many of those. Most dog people are dog people from the beginning, but congratulations, you're seeing the light. What kind of dog is he?
What's that?
What kind of dog is he?
He's a coonhound and a Doberman mix.
Oh, fun. Yeah, big
Yeah.
dog then.
Yep, he'll be big.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Thanks for sharing that. And I can't help but notice, just circling back, picking up on this details, you said your wife, you said when you started in 2021, you were, so not only did
Well,
you build this portfolio, but you found a wife. How did you find time for
yeah,
that?
I wasn't single in the sense of not dating. We were dating,
Okay.
but we like things change when you get married, right? And so I was a little bit more risk adverse, if you will. Then I was like, who
Yeah.
knows what'll happen? Let's just go for it. But to be honest, she's been super, super supportive and helpful in the business. She was able to walk away. She was a nurse, so she was able to walk away from nursing, but she helps big time in the business too. So she honestly loves it too. So it made the journey a lot easier, because I think a lot of people, their partner doesn't support the beginning of those journeys because you don't have that proof of concept yet. And it
Mhm.
really holds up people from being able to do that. And it's tough to see. She trusted me. We kind of went all in on it together, and it's been good.
That's really cool. I love that. And she's along for the ride. You got to retire her, right, from
Yeah.
nursing, and now she helps out with real estate. That's really cool. That's like best case scenario. So
Yeah,
congrats.
for sure.
That is cool. So tell us, you told us what you're obsessed with, and you told us the journey of your marrying your wife. What is a fun fact about you that people wouldn't otherwise know, besides that, my opinion, you look like Jeremy Renner?
Well, yeah, I think that, a lot of people, I come off pretty intense, right? Like pretty, just in my, just meeting people, I just kind of, I don't know why, but I'm very passionate, and it could seem like harsh on the outside. But I think in general, I really care a lot about people. And I think that, I started doing some like coaching and stuff, and I found a lot of like just passion and interest in seeing other people win. I think once you've had some personal success, it kind of becomes a little bit repetitive. And maybe people that know me really well be like, yeah, Kyle does have a soft side, but like don't let intensity and passion remove this side of like, I definitely do truly care a lot about people. And really, it's weird for me to say I have a soft side. There's something about that doesn't roll off the tongue well for me. But if I were to just to answer the question, I would say that I have a soft side, and that would probably surprise a lot of people.
Interesting. From our conversation, this is me just meeting you. I wouldn't say that that would be a surprise to me, but maybe you just told me about your dog, so I guess I've
I'm
already seen this soft side.
just a mushy guy these days.
Fun. So, do you have any book recommendations for our listeners?
I do. It's not real estate specific, but it's called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. And it's just exactly what it sounds like. The Slight Edge. It's a bunch of different concepts and functions that you can implement into your life that give you exactly that. A slight edge over your competition, over just yourself, right? Like just giving yourself a slight edge to be more successful in your day, in your week, in your month, in your year, in your journey. There's just a bunch of actual like tactical steps in there, like do A and you could get B, and this was your slight edge over different concepts. So yeah, The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson.
I will be honest, I read that like back to back with the compound effect,
Mm.
Darren Hardy, and I cannot remember the difference between the two. So I like read a book and I'm like, oh, this is the best ever. I'm going to read a book similar to it. And then they just all blend.
Well, I think that's the great thing about books, and like just books and podcasts and all that stuff. Like you take all these small little nuggets from hundreds of books, hundreds of podcasts, and then you start developing your own little sentences, and you're developing your mind, but it's really just a bunch of information that you've gathered and started like kind of creating in your own life. So I mean, I read it every single day pretty religiously. I mean, sometimes I miss a few days, but that's one of the things that I found. Like my vocabulary is greatly increased, my
Mm.
the way words flow, things like that. All they are is just a bunch of different concepts taken from other people's words and other people's, books.
Yeah. So you actually read, or do you do Audible and say that you read? Like I,
Both.
oh, okay. All right.
Yep, I do both.
Do you have any plans to write a book?
I think that I do, but I think it's going to be, I want to reach a certain level of, I just think experience. I need some more experience. I need some more time. I need to develop just some more things in life, just from like a business aspect, even. But I think like my 40s is when I want to write a book. Like I tell my wife, like, I just feel like I want to write a book, but I'm just like, just wait. I just want some more life experience before, rolling out a book. But other people have said don't wait, so I
I
just,
mean, you could write one now and then.
exactly, that's what someone else said. I know.
I say don't put it off. So what is next for you?
Yeah, I think what's really next in the real estate world for me, I'm going to, like I kind of mentioned before, which is my pain point, but I'm going to make it my next point, is starting to hire some leadership positions so that I can start expanding at a more accelerated rate, bringing in people to take over some of the high level underwriting, some of the refinance stuff, the negotiation with. So we do a lot of like our renovations. Like we don't buy from like big box stores necessarily. We buy direct from manufacturers. So we do a lot of like in-house negotiations for product price reductions, things like that. So bringing in some of those people and honestly just making it a legit company. Like I not making it, hey, what do you do? I'm a real estate investor. I would be like, no, I run a real estate business, right? Like I want to make it a legit business. So making the transition from just a investor to we're a real estate business at a high operating function, I guess, is really the next goal here.
That is cool. And it might be, I mean, this might be personal of a question as far as your goals. Like, is there a certain number that you want to hit? I mean, if it's income, you don't necessarily have to share that because that's always weird. But transactions, what has to take place in order for you to feel like you're now a real estate business?
Yeah, I think so. Right now, I live in Green Bay. I'm from Michigan. I think when I can move to Michigan and my location in Wisconsin, which is where I mostly buy, can be ran 90% of the time from my leadership positions, and I can move back to Michigan, which is where my wife and I ultimately want to end up.
Mhm.
I think at that point, I will be like, we have something good going to where I don't have to be in person day to day at every single location. And I don't mean like legitimately I'm driving to Ohio and Milwaukee all in one day, right? I just mean like I have to show face at some point along each process. I think once I'm no longer doing that and I can have more of just leadership positions and be able to have meetings with them and where contractors aren't calling me going, Kyle, we need more mud at the house. I think it's less about like transactions necessarily. It's
Mhm.
more about just like what are the inputs and outputs of my day-to-day operate. And I
That
think
makes
some of
sense.
that's going to obviously require increasing volume so that I can pay the growth of the company. So just
Right.
inevitably the company will grow by doing this. And I don't, you know, a lot of people talk about annual goals. I don't necessarily put a number on it. I try to improve my inputs so that I get better outputs. Like, what can I improve on this year? It's like, well, here's some things that we can implement to be able to grow. Like, I don't really have Kyle, you need to buy 100 units this year. I have more of like, what do we need to do in order to achieve growth in this company? And I look at how can I increase the amount of inputs that I can put into the company. Yeah, there's not necessarily like a monetary value behind it. I think it's more just going to be a feel thing for me on what my day to day looks like, and I'll be like, all right, we've made it.
I love that. So you'll know when you're there if
I
you
think so.
step
I
away.
hope so, man.
And
I
the,
hope so.
well, it sounds like the types of activities that you'll be doing is going to change, right?
Exactly.
I really
Yep,
think,
exactly.
yeah, you got to look up EOS.
I will.
That's all for me. Oh, people want to follow you in your journey or say hi or ask you any questions or eventually buy your book. Where can they contact you?
Yeah, I would say just go to my Instagram, which is KJ_root. Just go there, shoot me a message. If you got questions, I'm open to talk and help you out however I can. But I think Instagram is where I'm most active, put a bunch of free content out there. So Instagram would be the best.
Okay, and I briefly looked before hopping on. There was something called a journal. Do you sell a journal or that was just you journaling?
So every morning, I kind of my days are very structured, if you will, for the most part. Like for the first like 8 hours a day, they're pretty structured. So every single morning, I post a picture of when I wake up in my journal, post a picture of my journal and my to-do list. So every single day, I write down the top 5 things that I need to accomplish today in order to move the business forward, right? And I just post that. One, it's accountability for me. I've had tons of people reaching out being like, "Hey, your consistency is really helping me out." And so it's not my journal or my calendar. It's more so just me posting accountability like, "Hey, I'm up early, I'm getting after it. Follow me, come along the journey with me. Like let's start doing some consistent."
I love that. That is so cool. I've been struggling with getting back on a morning routine since having my son 6 months ago.
Well, yeah.
been a
I believe it.
whirlwind. And so I really I'm like, okay, even if it's not a morning routine, just some kind of routine. So that's really cool that you have that on there, because I'm going to follow you and look for it. In case, I know I'm curious, in case any of our listeners are curious, and you kind of touched on it, what is your morning routine?
So I wake up at just around 3:45. Recently, I let my dog out, so that's been new. Let my dog out, come back, and I just look at my calendar, my to-do list, how my day is going to be set up. I write down my top 5 that I need to accomplish today in order to move the company forward. And then I read. I read 10 pages every single day. Then I go to the gym, come home, eat breakfast, and then on with my day.
That's cool. Did you get that from Hal Elrod? Is that the name of Miracle?
No, some of those things I actually got, like the journal, or like the calendar that I have, and the top 5 is from Andy Frisella. It's actually his wife,
Mm.
Emily Frisella. She sells the planner, and so that's what I got, the top 5, like write down the top 5 to move yourself
Yeah.
forward, because, and this could sound kind of, I don't know, maybe too far to some people, but so at the end of every single day, I write down the top 5 and I cross them off. And at the top of the page, I write a W and circle it. And so I know that I necessarily won the day, right? Like, you did what you said you were going to do. You won the day. Good job. Some days my day ends at 1 o'clock. Sometimes it ends at 10 p.m. It just
Yeah.
depends. And when I get to the end of every single month, I go back and look at the losses and the wins. I give myself a percentage. And again, this goes back to like me just being like kind of a number person. I give myself a percentage on what I won. And again, like, a lot of people will say, so you just kind of like live your life based on statistics and numbers and things like that. And it's not that. It's it's a tool that I use when I get off track. So when I get off track and I'm like, we haven't been hitting the goals that we have the last 3 months, I go back and look at what I was doing February, January, February, March. And I'm like, hey, you were winning every single day. You were writing down your top 5. You were consistent in what you wanted to do. And it's really historical data for me, looking back at like Q1 of 2022 or Q1 of 2021, things like that, where it's like, what were you doing day in and day out to be able to move your company forward at an exponential growth period? So yeah, maybe a little too much for some people, but hey, it works for me.
That's intense. I've definitely gone through periods of where I've done that. And it's funny that you say it sound like you feel like this is like this numbers part of you. It sounds like a really numbers driven thing. And that's not what I hear at all. You know what I hear?
Yeah, well,
A competitive athlete,
could
right?
be.
That's what
Yeah,
I
for sure.
hear is, the more athlete jock side of you that is tracking your progress, just like you would rewatching old videos of a game, to see where you had a misstep and planning workouts and stuff like that. That's what I hear is out of
You
that.
have really good perspective. That's a good perspective. It's almost like a scoreboard. And I never
Yes.
even thought about that. It's like a
Yeah.
scoreboard, something that I can reflect back on. Yeah, it's good.
Right. Because what's the fun of playing a game if you're not keeping score, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So
That's
that's
good.
really cool. I'm going to follow you, and I hope all of my listeners do too, and are just as inspired by your consistency. Thank you so much, Kyle, for hopping on the show. It's been really great interviewing you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Kyle. Well, that was our interview. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it, like, subscribe, support the show for more content like this. And if you are so inclined, I'd love a 5-star review. It'll help me in the algorithm and reach more people. That would be wonderful. If you'd like to connect with the show, feel free to go to the website obsessedwithrealestateshow.com, where you can find all of the resources, all the book recommendations, links to those, as well as submit to be a guest on the show. You can find me on Instagram, follow, and reach out at AlanaGeorge_real estate. I'd love if you reached out and said hello. As well as if you are interested in syndications, my website, clearconnectioncapital.com, has a lot of information on what syndications are, why they're beneficial as real estate investments. So check that out. I will see you on the next episode.